All right, we're live. So, TeriLyn, nice to officially see you again. We just discussed right before we went live. I said I was joking how in North Carolina, right? You say good to see you again, not good to meet you, because our paths have crossed a while ago. So
Right.
good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So, for folks who haven't had the opportunity to know you yet or know your world, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in Utah, and when I graduated college, I went to Brigham Young University. I worked at Goldman Sachs. I was a financial analyst. And I worked there for a few years. And then through a long sordid story, I ended up in North Carolina, came out here with somebody who was going to law school. And I hated Winston, but I was like, he was in law school. I had to stay here. And then law school ended, that relationship ended. And I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. 15 years later, I'm still here. I actually did leave for a little bit and missed it so much that I came back. But when I moved out here, I was working at BB&T, first as a compensation analyst, and then the marketing department. And I started a blog when I was a compensation analyst. Like I had blogged before that, but just like a personal blog. And I started a health blog just to get like my creative fix. And because I hated my compensation job, I thought it was so boring. And BB&T was a big culture shock after Goldman Sachs, like very, very different.
Yeah.
And the marketing department, I was reviewing their jobs and I was like, people get paid to do this? Like, this sounds awesome. So I reached out to the marketing department and I'm like, I have no experience, but I would love to work in marketing. And an opening came about and I applied and I got the job. So I switched from like a financial role into social media. And I helped BB&T launch their Facebook page, and like they got into Twitter and like really kind of helped launch their social media, which was cool. Because I had this blogging experience, which was just a hobby. And then I got recruited from BB&T to go to Wells Fargo to help run their social media, because knowing financial services and social media, which I'd been blogging for over a decade at the time, was a pretty rare combination to know both. So then I was at Wells Fargo for 6 years doing video production and managing national social media campaigns. And I loved it. I thought it was just a really great organization until it wasn't. And I was still blogging on the side and doing all of that. And then I guess it was probably 5-6 years ago, I knew that I wanted more flexibility because all my family was in Utah. And I hated planning my life around vacation days. It was so hard to go home to see them. And I decided I wanted to work for myself and I was going to start to monetize my blog. I'd never done it. And now here I am. I blog full time. I have 2 full-time employees and I've got a few contractors and I love it. Like working for myself has been the best thing I've ever done.
You took the leap, especially you took it like, a year or two before the world went crazy.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think that's probably a good thing, probably.
Yes.
So I bet there are people, right, listening to this and they're like, so that sounds awesome. What does that entail? Like, what's a day?
Like a day in the life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll pull up I kind of map my day out hour by hour. So from like 6 to 7, I typically get up and just like 5:30. Sometimes it's 5:30. Today I was up at 5. So in the early morning, I work and I just like hammer out emails. So I can kind of just triage things like to my team, any brands that are outstanding, things like that. And then typically I have a 2.5-year-old. So once he's up, I spend a little bit of time with him. I do a morning workout. And so my main verticals on my blog are fashion and beauty, but I started with running. So I still actually have a pretty strong running pillar. So after my workout, we'll typically film or take photos that are running related. And then while I get ready, I'm filming again. So like I'm filming my makeup, I'm filming a hair tutorial. And then I typically am taking photos of my outfit. I'm taking photos of like new products that I got in. And then depending on the day, like I might have a brand partnership. Like yesterday I had a brand partnership with a bag company. So I was filming videos about the bag. I was taking pictures. So then editing photos, I typically send them over to my content manager and she'll submit them for approval. She'll get all the links we need, upload them to Instagram, add the captions. It's like whole thing. So like taking pictures and getting ready and taking like videos of it is a good chunk of my day. And then I'm we typically film YouTube videos during my son's nap. Sometimes he's in them, but like he's just been a little feisty lately. So we try to film while he's sleeping. And then the afternoon is typically what I reserve for like phone calls, brand meetings, triaging emails again. So yeah, it's kind of like content creation in the morning and then like more business administrative in the afternoon.
Makes sense. That's cool. I mean, it is, and to be consistent, I think a lot of folks, they're like you mentioned, they dabble, right? They do it and they dabble, but it is a full-time gig if you want to make it your career, right? I mean, it is.
Well, and everyone that I've hired, because I've had multiple contractors over the year, probably a dozen, and every single person that I've hired has said, I had no idea how complicated it is and how much work it is. When you really are trying to monetize it, and especially when you add brands into the mix, like it's a lot.
Yeah, my favorite thing, and well, before I'll make the statement, I'll ask you, did you work harder as a W-2 or 1099?
Oh, 1099, hands down. But I love it. Like I work so much harder now.
I get it. And I think but it's just so interesting because so many people go into business for themselves because they want that flexible lifestyle. And I think i.e. the vision or the thought of working less.
Yes, it's flexible, but you work a lot more. Like, especially given the nature of what I do and probably what you do too, you are never off. Like you are always working. Like the only time I can truly take off is I go on a vacation with my husband once a year and I delete Instagram, I delete email, I tell my brand manager, I tell my content manager, like I am off the grid. Like text me if you need me. And that's the only way I can get time away. But it's fine because I love it. Like I really, really do. But you have to be a little bit of a workaholic, I feel like, if you want to work for yourself.
Yeah, if you wanted to, if you want to, especially the first several years until a strong foundation is built.
Yeah.
And I think most people in today's society see the end and go, oh, I'm just gonna get there, and I'm gonna do it in short order. And it's like, oh, good luck with that.
But it is nice now. Like I'm going to Utah to see my family. I'm going for 10 days and I don't have to like take time off work. I don't have to take vacation days. Like my team's still going to like run the show while I'm gone. I'll still like be on email and like I'll touch in every day, but it is flexible, but I'm going to pay for it when I get back, So I think people misunderstand flexible.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's, you're going to put in more time. Bottom line is if you want to be a 1099 individual, it will most likely come with more hours, especially those first few years. But to your point, you still ultimately determine when they are. And when you have a 2.5-year-old, that's very helpful.
Yes, exactly.
I got a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old, and yeah, I understand. So okay. So I want to go back to something you said earlier, which I think is awesome, that when you moved here, you did not like Winston. What was it? Do you remember what was the initial like, no thanks, Winston?
I thought it was so small. Like I grew up in Salt Lake City, which I didn't realize was a big city because it's all I knew. And I thought Winston was so small. I was like, what do you mean you don't have a Nordstrom? Like I really liked Nordstrom at the time. So it just felt really, really small to me. And growing up in Utah, like if you've been there, it's like a flat valley, you can see forever, and then it's the mountains. So I missed the outdoors a lot, like the easy access, but like I also felt really claustrophobic, like driving, being surrounded by trees because I couldn't see, which sounds so weird, but like I'm 40, I felt very claustrophobic. And my mom has said the same thing when she visits. She's like, you can't see. And now I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it was just so different. And like in Utah, going on a hike or going to the lake, like it wasn't like an ordeal. Like I went trail running every day after work. Like I went hiking every weekend. It wasn't a thing versus here. I feel like you plan your whole day to go on a hike and it's like this thing.
Yeah.
And so it just like, I think culturally, it just felt really different. And like, I mean, Utah is a very, very, very nice place. Like people are very friendly, but like complete strangers would just talk to me in line at the grocery store. And I'm like, why are they talking to me? And now I'm that person. Like, yeah, like now I'm the person making contact, but it was just, And I didn't know a soul. Like I did not know a single person. So it was just a lot of things. And I was really mad to leave Goldman. Like I loved my job and I was doing really well there. And then to go to BB&T and they were telling me to wear hose and it was required. Like it was just, I felt like I had stepped back in time and I'm like, I'm sorry, you're telling me to wear hose? Like what? Like I had a faux hawk at Goldman. Like it was just a lot of things that I hated and it was not safe to go downtown. Yeah, it was just very different.
So okay, so let's go down that path. When was that? When did you move here?
2008.
So, by the way, you beat my stuff moved here in 2008. I physically didn't move here until 9.
Okay.
So similar, and downtown, when I remember joking with my wife, we said this a couple of days ago, that basically Foothills was downtown.
Yeah, that was it.
So kudos and shout out to the brewery that is Foothills, that is now national. And they deserve it because they were like the pioneers of downtown. But now, of course, totally different beast.
Right. Like I ended up living downtown. Like I lived in a loft downtown. I loved it downtown. So it's funny to think about like that whole area of Bailey Park was like fenced off. Do you remember that? Like you couldn't even go over there.
For years.
And then I lived there. Like so Winston's changed a lot.
It has, and it changed pretty quickly. I mean, I'd say by 13 or so, it was like, oh, we've got a little bit of downtown coming. And then by, 17-ish, it was like, yeah. And now it's awesome downtown.
Yeah.
But I think that happened similarly across the country. Like I think,
right.
So I'm not saying that that's special to Winston, but let's transition to what maybe is. So if I had to describe Winston in 2 words, what would be the 2 words that you would say best describe Winston?
I would probably say pride. Like I think people take pride in like being part of a city that's trying to like grow and like it's not in Asheville. And I think people take pride that it's like kind of under the radar. And historical, I lived in Charlotte for a little bit. And like this kind of goes along with it, like pride in the history. I moved to Charlotte and like I was just like sickened at all the houses they were tearing down and like the buildings they would tear down to build new. And here, like I love that they restore old houses. They don't tear down, they restore buildings. And I think that is really cool.
So I smiled as soon as you said that word because I've always said that about the city, that I find at first when you move here, it's not uncommon to have the same reaction you had. I think mine was, I just remember saying, I think I used a slightly unkind version of pride when I first moved here. And then by the time, I'd say it didn't take me long, maybe 18 months, not quite 2 years, I was like, I get it. And once you live here, you do build a pride about it and want to be a part of it in that way, and the element of it. And that's cool in the historic. I 100% agree. And I can tell you that the historic, I just lost the word, but it is also a real thing. If you own a home in West End, and are trying to restore it, they will want you to. So, all right. So then let's circle back to you. Let's go back to the journey did you like straight out of the gate from leaving Truist, find instant success? It was all really easy and your world just blew up, or was like, how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. I mean, so I had been doing it for like, I started my first blog in 2004. So like I'd been blogging for a very, very long time. But before I actually quit Wells, I decided it was probably like, I made a 2-year plan that was like, I'm going to ramp up over 2 years. And by the end of 2 years, I want to be able to quit my job, but I need to be able to make a certain amount. Hi, honey. There's my son. Buddy, I'll be right there. I just like threw open my doors. Sorry.
So, don't worry about it. This is called life. And
yeah.
like I said, I got a 5-year-old.
Yeah, this is working from home.
The good and the bad.
Yes, he's so cute. So I decided like I was going to give myself like a 2-year ramp up, and I wasn't going to have benefits, like I wasn't going to have anything. And so I was like, okay, this is how much I need to make every single month to like, because I wanted to make double my income to just have that like real safety net.
Yeah.
And because it was just me, like, like I wasn't like, I was providing for myself. I'm married now, but at the time I was like, I'm gonna give myself a 2-year. Once I hit this mark, like I'll quit. And I hit that mark in 18 months. But so I just started like posting a lot more. I hired an assistant. I ramped up her hours. I started doing new channels. I started doing newsletters. I started adding in new affiliates I hadn't done. And I was working like 80 hours a week, and I was training for the Boston Marathon. So like it was real gritty for 18 months. Like it was hard. And like I don't regret it. I'm so happy where I was, but like transparently, I started having panic attacks. Like it got bad, but
You were doing a lot.
I was doing a lot. And like maybe in retrospect, like maybe I should have done something differently, but that's just not the way I'm wired. Like probably shouldn't have tried to like start my own business and train for the Boston Marathon at the same time, but like, that's what I did. So it was really just like adding in new things that I hadn't done before. And I think the newsletter was the biggest thing. Like that's where I really started to see income come in, was through the newsletter. And I had no idea how to do a newsletter. Like I just started watching YouTube videos.
Because of the providers and ultimately all that you're sharing in your newsletter. So if somebody's watching this and they've never, first of all, they're like, how do I get a part of this newsletter?
Oh, so they can just go to my blog, which is TeriLynAdams.com, just TeriLyn Adams.com. And at the very bottom there, it'll say join my newsletter. And on almost any post you click on, there's probably going to be a pop-up that's like, do you want my Amazon finds? Do you want my makeup routine? And then they'll get added to my newsletter there. Or they can just like DM me. I'm pretty easy to find.
I'm sure. Well, that's your hope.
Right. Yeah, that's the goal. I did just rebrand, which was slightly terrifying. So I'd been a Foodie Stays Fit since 2009. That's when I started it. Because I was doing running and like fashion, running, food, recipes. And after like 8-10 years of doing it, I was like, I hate recipes. Like, I don't like doing it. And it's like food blogging is an entirely different beast. So I was like, sure. I don't want to do this. So I kind of like, I still blog about running because I love it. It's a big part of my brand. But what I got the most questions about was fashion and beauty. And people are like, what are you wearing? And I'm like, this is like J. Crew Factory from like 10 years ago. I don't know. like I was not like, I grew up with 5 brothers. Like it really blew my mind when people wanted to know like what I was wearing. And so I just leaned into that more. And I got so lucky that my content manager has incredible taste. She also, like, we have very different style, but she very much understands my style. So she does a ton of the fashion content, and she'll send me things like, do you like this? Like, but I don't think that if you had asked me in 2010, like like, okay, you're blogging full time, I'd be like, I don't even know what that means. So it's very much like one of those things, like you learn one step at a time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true for a lot of things. I just think that your thing is maybe more out of touch for folks, right?
Yeah, it's like hard for people to understand. Like people ask me questions that I don't think they would ever ask anyone else. Like, so how much money do you make?
Yeah. I knew you were going there. As soon as you went there, I was like, that's
like, how much money do you make? Like, I make a good living.
You want to share? You want to put it on a Post-it note on our foreheads? Yeah.
Oh, this is my favorite. It's like, oh, so what does your husband do? And I'm like, I make money too. He does not pay for my employees. Like, it's so like, ooh. You can tell it's a sensitive.
I get it.
Yeah, I get that too.
But I was also raised in Northeast Ohio. My mother is a proud feminist, so that these are things that you learn if you were raised in Northeast Ohio by a prideful feministic mother.
That's awesome.
Not going there. So, and honestly, people never know. You never know.
You never know.
A lot of people in a lot of professions can appear that it is this, right? And it might not be.
One of my favorite stories is, so my husband's from Boone. We met this guy. He looked like he had just like rolled out from under a dirt pile, and which he probably literally had. And he's like a multi-millionaire. He's a farmer. And like, he just like figured out how to distribute his produce. And I'm like, I love that. But like, you would never look at him. Yeah. And I do think that's one downside of Winston, that I do think it's very appearance based. Like I would go to the grocery store in Utah in like sweatpants all the time. Or like I would go to a bridal shower in jeans. I would never go to a bridal shower in jeans here. Never. So it's like, it's very interesting how people are more, I think they just judge by appearances more here.
I think it honestly, though, depends on your world and where.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Because there are pockets of Winston, 100%. Like and look, I'm going to be real. If I'm showing a house in a certain spot, I'm going to dress for that spot. If I'm showing it in a, if I'm going to other spots, all within 15 minutes of downtown, I would be judged for wearing that. And yeah. I show a lot of properties and houses and again, 15 minutes from downtown, where the buyer is probably a multi-millionaire driving a pickup truck with flip-flops and a t-shirt. You know what I mean?
I love it.
And so
like my family, how I was raised is like, just like I grew up on a farm in Utah, and like my brother's a rancher. Like it's just, I think that was part of the culture shock. It was just like the Southern, and I'm sure because I worked in baking, I was around a certain group of people. Yeah. But I did find when we lived in Ardmore before we moved, and Ardmore felt more relaxed.
Well, Ardmore's a hodgepodge, right? Ardmore is going to bring you a variety all within a little baby, all within a couple of months. And that's what I think a lot of people love about it. Sherwood's becoming that too. Sherwood, old Sherwood especially, but there's pockets. Like that's what I say for this. There's a place for everything in this area, and and there's a person can find their crowd in Winston, right?
Yes, 100%.
So, all right, we're gonna post where they find you. Want to tell them one more time where they can learn more about you and get your newsletter?
Yeah, they can just go to TeriLynAdams.com. Just scroll to the bottom. It'll say sign up for my newsletter. You can find me on Instagram, TeriLyn Adams. TeriLyn Adams on Facebook. If you want to find a inactive Twitter account, I'm there too. But pretty much everywhere is just TeriLyn Adams.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for making time, for letting us spotlight you. And we talked a ton. I normally specifically ask Winston-based questions, but it just came up naturally.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how it does.
I appreciate it. And we'll let you go get back to your number one job. Your son's name?
Thomas.
Thomas. That's right. I thought so. And by the way, he's got killer hair.
He does have killer hair.
I'm jealous.
It's epic.
All right. Let me